Prince of Persia 2008. The first Prince of Persia game after 3 years. This isn't a sequel to the Sands of Time trilogy, but a reboot. And I mean a reboot. Basically everything is different from the last game. The story is different, the combat is different, the platforming is different, the style is different, the characters are different, and it's a lot lamer than anything we've had before. It's not necessarily a terrible game, but it's not that much fun to play. Story time. During a sandstorm, our brand new prince has lost his donkey that's carrying treasure and falls down a canyon and meets Alika, a woman endowed with magical powers, and takes him to a temple that's imprisoned Ahriman, the god of darkness. But her father cuts down the magic tree that has Ahriman trapped and plunges the ruined kingdom into darkness. And the prince and Alika need to heal the lands to stop Ahriman from escaping while fighting his most powerful underlings, the warrior, the alchemist, the concubine, and the warrior, and later Alika's father. After the lands are healed, they return to the temple to re-imprison Ahriman. But after accomplishing this, Alika sacrifices herself. But the prince re-releases Ahriman and restores Alika's life, plunging the land once again into darkness. That's how the game ends, but there's also an epilogue that's a DLC, where the prince and Alika traverse an underground part of the kingdom until they reach the very end of the kingdom. Alika leaves to find her people, and the prince is left alone in the darkness. Want to know what happens after the cliffhanger? Download the epilogue and get another cliffhanger. Yay? First, some positives. The main characters are our brand new titular prince and Alika are both good characters with their own unique power sets that you have to use during a fight. This open world environment is something that Prince of Persia has never done before, and said environments are nice to look at. The game's illustrative look is very unique, and still looks breathtaking. The villains, well, except for 2, are just serviceable, but the ones that stand out really stand out. The concubine is charismatic with a magnetic personality, and her voice actress is clearly having the time of her life voicing her.
Oh, does it hurt? Let me help you relieve the pain. Tut tut, so willful, so destructive. Do you break everything you find? Try it. That's the thing with life. It's so confusing. You think you know where you are, then everything changes. What have we here? Are they real or are they a dream?
Where is she?
Just waiting for my prince. Your past is nothing. The dream is dead. Why do you want a princess when you can have a queen? The last of the Ura. Their queen comes to die in the hall of coronation. It's almost a waste of the irony for it to fall on such a humorless people.
Alika.
She's infected you deep. So deep you don't even know your own mind.
And the warrior is a complex antagonist that stands out amongst the more generic villains other than the concubine. The music is pleasant, though it's all the more unfortunate that the music never got as good as the Sands of Time's music. Unfortunately, there's also a lot wrong with this game. The gameplay is very repetitive. The combat is pretty dull, the platforming is ridiculously simplified, you can't die. Make a mistake during platforming? Don't worry, Alika will put you back to the start. Is your reaction time too slow during a fight? No problem, Alika will save you from the killing blow. Does a bad guy infect you with a virus? Don't worry, Alika can hold the corruption back, end quote, until you heal the lands. There isn't even a time limit. You can take as long as you want. And the villains are kind of lame. The warrior is a generic beast that just growls. Honestly, he's my least favorite of the corrupted. The alchemist gets maybe one good line, but he's pretty forgettable. The soldiers that show up occasionally throughout the game are a bore, but luckily if you get to their spawning vortex in time, you can cut it down and avoid a boring fight. And for all the build-up that Araman got throughout the game, well, the only thing interesting about him is that the final confrontation with him is that it's from his perspective. And he does speak in two distinct voices, one masculine and one feminine, but I'm pretty much just reaching for nice things to say. Prince of Persia was not the success that Ubisoft wanted. It sold over 2 million copies over the course of a year. That may sound okay, but The Sands of Time did about the same 5 years prior, and that's without 3 positively reviewed games released a year apart. And though the reviews were okay, they weren't as good as the previous games. Can the series save itself? It may only have one chance. Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands, 2010. 2010 was a pretty big year for the Prince of Persia franchise. In addition to a new game released, the series was also adapted into a live-action movie released by Disney. So the 2008 video game didn't really do it for people. How will the franchise win people back? A sequel with an exciting story and a completely new combat system? Another reboot? A Bumblebee-style prequel spin-off quasi-reboot? None of the above? What? No, Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands is an interquel taking place between Sands of Time and Warrior Within that also brought back Yuri Lowenthal. This game just screams uninspired. The game is short, the combat is dull, the villain is the most boring of any Prince of Persia game. I suspect that this game only exists because the series was getting a movie and Ubisoft thought, hey, since we're getting a movie, let's put out a new game. And they decided to just remake Sands of Time on newer technology. Just not as good. The prince even looks similar to Jake Gyllenhaal between their promotional images. He's wearing similar armor, and they even pose similarly. I have nothing left to say about this game. It's just so damn unremarkable. This game does have a 300 joke though. That's funny, kind of. What the hell happened to Prince of Persia? Well, before I answer that, I'm going to take a moment to discuss something that happened for Ubisoft between Prince of Persia: The Two Thrones and the 2008 reboot. A developer was working on a reboot called, and the last word is key, Prince of Persia Assassin. In this game, instead of playing as the prince, you'd play as an assassin tasked with protecting the prince. Though Ubisoft liked the concept, they didn't want a Prince of Persia video game where the player did not play as the prince. The idea was fleshed out, and Prince of Persia Assassin would become the first Assassin's Creed game released in 2007. This game sold 8 million units. Prince of Persia, released a year later, sold 2 million units. Think about that. The game, which is part of a venerable series, was outsold 4 times over by the game without a legacy. Not to mention that it got good, well, pretty good reviews. The sequel, Assassin's Creed 2, released 2 years later, and 1 year after the Prince of Persia reboot, sold 9 million units, 7 million more than Prince of Persia, and also received critical acclaim. The next sequel, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which was released the same year as The Forgotten Sands, also sold well, with over 7 million units, and also received critical acclaim. Compared to The Forgotten Sands' mediocre reviews, and I assume mediocre sales, I can't find any information on The Forgotten Sands sales. So what happened to Prince of Persia? Poor decisions, poor reviews, mediocre sales, and the launch of a franchise that turned out to be far more successful than Ubisoft ever would have guessed. Will Prince of Persia return? I mean, possibly, but not probably. It's been 9 years since the last Prince of Persia console game. Since then, Assassin's Creed put out, what, 20 games? Honestly, I stopped paying attention after Black Flag. Prince of Persia hasn't put out a new video game that wasn't a port or a Temple Run ripoff. You know, it seems rather appropriate that the last Prince of Persia game had forgotten in its title. Forgotten, like this once strong franchise. Alas, poor Prince of Persia franchise. I knew him.